Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Friday, August 25th, 2023. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Happy Friday, everyone. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. In the previous session, one thing we were looking for was how is price going to respond to the previous session's highs and close. Given the downtrend here, what we've seen lately is a lot of failed new highs and a return back down. And so a failure of the previous high would open up the previous midpoint. In this case, not only did that happen, a fade after trend day, but also a major outside day down as significant rejections were seen, especially in the YM. We'll talk about that in a bit here. But this was a huge trap and reversal here, a major close lower, and a big time reaction, a lower high, and now gives us a new pivot high as well to work with down the road. Down the road, if bulls are able to push through this prior pivot high here, it'll open up the previous highs up above. So 4,500 to 4,650, 4,500 to 4,350, and then 4,300 to 4,200. Those are your 150 point distributions. To reject this area right here suggests we're in this area with a potential to go downward into 4,200 ahead. The other thing we discussed, if we are headed lower, we have a couple of levels down below, short-term levels like the 4305, that's a gap fill there, and then we have the 4200 level down below. But today, we have Fed Chair Powell coming up at 9:05 a.m. Central Time. That could provide some volatility both back up the range or perhaps lower. The 4550 zone right here is going to be very important. Any rally into that zone, you would likely see bears defend for a continuation downward. Again, we have a downward bias until price can push back below or back above that prior pivot high. All right, let's take a look now at the NQ. If you take a look at the NQ here, you'll notice similar price action in the previous session, although this one led the selling pressure to the downside. Led the initial wave of weakness, big time selling pressure, and then as that was happening, as the selling pressure was happening, you've seen the YM rally to the upside at the same time. So again, it was quite a different move there. We're seeing right here how big that day was on a one-day basis the previous session. A huge high range day of what is that, 601 points. 600 point day here, and it left behind a significant rejection at the 15.4. Big time move. Now, one thing we talked about before is the developing market structure here, where you have the top end of this range here or thereabouts, you have the top end of that range, and then you have the bottom end of this range here. So recently giving up that edge brought us back to the bottom. That's why we kept mentioning 800 to 850. We've seen the bounce, and then yesterday here rejecting the top end back down. Again, that would suggest perhaps a continuation downward. Up ahead 14K and 13.5 could be big time targets down the way, especially if this larger rounded top slash head and shoulder pattern starts to really give way. So big time selling pressure here. As always, this pivot top right there is going to be very important down the road. If price is able to push through that pivot down the road, it opens up several hundred points to the upside. So keeping an eye on that. But right now, big time reaction. Narrow range here today, at least right now, 35% of ADR. ES is at 33% of average range, ahead of the Fed Chair Powell's Jackson Hole speech here. So we'll see how the market responds to that. At the moment, again, any pullback toward the 150 zone, 160 zone could be sold for a continuation down. All right, let's take a look here at crude oil. Now, crude had shown quite a bit of weakness, has now bounced. We're seeing a return back above the 79s and a steady dose of strength here since the after hours reopen in the previous session. Price is pushing not only back through 79s, but back above 80 and approaching the 81s that initially went offered to bring us back down. So downtrending price action. Given the strength within the down move here, you want to see how price finishes the day. right? To be up this early is very strong, very bullish. But what if by the end of the day we close back down? Very similar to this day. You're going to throw behind another rejection tail within a downtrending market, and 75, 76 could be the next zone down. So right now, pullback within a downtrend. We still have the 80 half as a big time level here. That's the previous year's close. To drop back below it, bears still want to defend into weakness until proven otherwise. So watching 79, 75 or so, a break back below that zone starts to open up a bit more weakness back towards 79 and perhaps lower. So keep an eye on that for crude oil. Now, taking a look here at gold. Gold is showing some surprising strength here without hitting a major edge and without showing a major rejection or reaction. It's a pretty narrow range here. This day right here was a pretty solid low, and since then it's bounced and held. We've got ourselves another narrow range up here that's developed around and above the 1940 level with an upward bias. This was a huge squeeze and to hold on the last couple of days in a range bound market here again opens up the potential for a push higher. Keep an eye on the 1950 level. 1950 right here is going to be important. It's going to be one of those right here where we're sitting at it like this and all of a sudden we explode through it. If we explode through it, it's going to open up the upside up to about 2000 just from a short-term perspective as this market continues to trade kind of in a range-bound manner. So 1950 is going to be important here. 2-day narrow range within an up move. We'll watch to see if it can push through 1950. It'll open up some upside in the very near term. All right, let's take a look here at the YM. Now, in the previous session, the YM had a significant rejection, 638-point day. It was a huge reaction. One thing we mentioned in the pre-market video yesterday morning was we have a narrow 5-day range, and if we fail up here, say we hit 800 and drop, it would be a 1,000 point move downward. That would be the forecasted move to 33.8. Yesterday we nearly got 800, didn't quite get that high. The high was in the 737 level. So 34,737, 1,000 points down can put us into the 33,737 zone or above. So again, based off of this rejection here, we have downside right into this target that could be ahead very soon. This pullback, keep an eye on the pullback here into about 34.3 to 34.4. That pullback into this zone could be defended for an inverted checkmark trend day down as this thing works its way downward toward 33.8, the next key edge and value from a year-to-date VWAP standpoint and the 200-day moving average standpoint. So more downside likely here ahead, and the morning pullback could be stifled here at this point here at around 350 to 400. So keeping an eye on this pullback here to see how it's treated. Again, Fed Chair Powell could move this thing in a significant fashion as we head into the weekend. As always, happy Friday here. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.